With Henry shut up in the tunnel, Edward found himself pulling more cranes to help with the workload. It's nice to do some work outside of the yard, he thought to himself. But some of the bigger engines weren't impressed. Edward's too old and slow. He'll just get in our way, they sniffed in the sheds. Only Gordon remained quiet, but he didn't defend poor Edward either. But the little engine didn't care. He was just glad to be out working again. The next morning, Edward was pulling a line of coal trucks. He knew how to manage trucks, and they followed him smoothly and quietly. It was a peaceful morning, but as they reached the next station, they found trouble. A passenger train stood waiting at the platform, but its engine, a big blue engine named Constance, wasn't coupled to it. "What's the matter?" asked Edward as he came to a stop. "The turntable is jammed," replied the station master. "We can't turn Constance around. Now there's no one to pull the train." "Can't she pull it backwards?" asked Edward. Constance let off steam crossly. "Me? Run backwards? I won't. It's not proper." "It's not ideal, but if you go carefully, I'm sure it would be all right," said Edward. But Constance wouldn't have it. "Shan't!" she snapped. Everyone seemed very annoyed. But Edward had an idea. "Excuse me," he said to the station master, "but would you like me to pull the train? I don't mind running backwards, and I promise to go carefully." The station master looked very happy. "Thank you, Edward," he said. Edward shunted his trucks away as Constance sat sulking. But he paid her no notice as he rolled over the crossing and stopped in front of the coaches. He was quickly coupled up. The people got aboard, the porter shut the doors, and the guard blew his whistle and waved his flag. "Peep, peep, peep, peep," whistled Edward. "Off we go, off we go." "Trickety-trock, trickety-trock, trickety-trock," said the coaches. They were soon running happily along. Lots of people came to the line side to watch the train go by. It wasn't often they saw an engine running backwards. They thought it was a funny sight. Even Henry, in his tunnel, thought it strange as the train passed by. But Edward didn't mind. He was just making sure he puffed as smoothly and carefully as he could. Whenever they stopped at a station, the people who got out would stop to say, "Thank you." And before long, Edward reached the final station. The driver was very proud. "You've done very well today," he said. Edward just smiled. "I couldn't let the passengers down," he replied. "I think you've earned a rest and a drink for that," said the driver. Edward's smile grew wider as he ran off happily for his rest.
Gordon always pulled the big express. He was very proud of this, and he was the only engine strong enough to pull it properly. However, one of the engines who lived in the sheds with Edward and Gordon thought otherwise. Her name was Lucille, and after Gordon, she was the biggest engine in the shed. "I could manage the express easily," she would say to anyone who would listen. She had been borrowed by the railway, which made her crosser still. She was sure she was better than Gordon. One day, Lucille was waiting at the station when Gordon came steaming in with the express. "Right on time," said Gordon proudly. "Humph! I'd have been early," Lucille said rudely. "Pah, you're just jealous that I'm the grandest," replied Gordon. As if to make himself clear, he gave a sudden blast of his whistle. Poop, poop, poop. This made the porter jump, which caused him to fall over his luggage trolley. Boxes and bags went everywhere. Gordon felt rather silly, and Lucille just laughed. "So much for being grand," she said as she blew smoke at him. Gordon felt even sillier when the fat director came out of his office to see what had happened. He remained quiet for the rest of the day. Lucille, however, was far from quiet. She was feeling very puffed up. "They could get rid of that silly engine and keep me instead," she said. "I'm far grander and wiser too." "If you were wise, you wouldn't be so rude," said Edward. "Everyone makes mistakes now and then." "Not me," said Lucille, as she fell happily to sleep. She was even happier the next morning. Gordon was having trouble building up steam. His fire wouldn't burn properly. "You'll have to pull the express," said the driver to Lucille. "Of course," she said. "I'll do it, and I'll be early too." So she set off for the station. Soon the guard blew his whistle, and Lucille steamed quickly away. "Come on, come on, come on," she said to the coaches as she hurried away. This made the coaches bump about behind her. "Oh, oh, oh, oh," they said, but Lucille didn't notice. The train was heavy, but she was determined to pull it. Soon she was puffing through the countryside as quickly as she could. But try as she might, Lucille felt the weight of the train greatly. Her face slowly began to turn red. "Hurry, hurry, hurry," she panted, but she hardly had any breath to speak. Just then she saw Edward up ahead. She didn't want him to see her struggling, so as they got closer, she blew a loud whistle, trying to sound like Gordon. Beep, beep, poop, beep. The noise echoed everywhere. Edward was very surprised, but Lucille didn't notice. At last they arrived at the station. Lucille was very happy to stop and catch her breath. But they had not stopped long when suddenly 2 fire engines rattled past on the road. Lucille wondered what had happened, but she found out moments later. "All your whistling made the fire brigade think there was an emergency," said the station master crossly. "You've caused a great deal of disturbance." Lucille felt very silly. Her face went an even deeper shade of red. She puffed slowly away, as quietly as she could. Later that day, she met Gordon at the big station. Gordon was waiting to take the express back. "You know, the express is about speed, not sound," he laughed. "I'd have thought a wise engine would know the difference." Lucille said nothing. She was very cross and just sulked in silence. But I think she deserved the teasing. Don't you?
Henry was a happy engine once again. He had been let out of his tunnel. He was now back to work, pulling the heavy express with Edward. The 2 engines were running the train until Gordon's burst safety valve had been mended. It was the next day when Gordon returned to work. "It's good to be back," he said. "I did miss the express yesterday. Thank you for taking care of it." Edward and Henry smiled. They both had fun pulling it. "We look splendid pulling it," said Henry. "You look even smarter when you've been repainted." Gordon chuckled. "Blue is a proper color for an engine." Henry smiled. He was looking forward to his repaint. He had had to wait for Gordon to return to work before getting his reward. "I hear you've got a special job yourself," said Henry. Gordon was surprised. "A special job? I didn't know. What is it?" "I think it's a special express train," said Edward. "Driver says it leaves early tomorrow morning." Gordon liked the sound of that. "2 express trains tomorrow? Just what a fine engine needs. It will be nice to have a good run." Edward and Henry were happy for Gordon, and the 3 engines chatted happily for the rest of the evening, which kept the other engines awake. The driver and fireman arrived early the next morning, but Gordon was already awake. "So, you know about the special train," said the driver. "Yes, I do," said Gordon. "We better be off as soon as we can." The driver laughed as the firemen lit the fire. Soon, they had made a nice lot of steam. The lever was pulled, and Gordon puffed away to find his train. But when he found his train, he was shocked. "Trucks?" Gordon cried. "Yes, trucks," said the driver. "It's a special express goods train. It must get to the end of the line quickly. That's why you were chosen." Gordon was cross. "I don't pull dirty trucks." But there was nothing he could do. He moaned as the shunter fastened the coupling. The guard blew his whistle from his van, and Gordon slunk away. "It's not right, it's not right, it's not right," he thought as he left. As he puffed away, Lucille passed by on the other line, laughing as she went. Gordon was crosser still, and made a face at her. "If I'm to pull trucks, I won't be seen pulling them," he said to himself as he began to go faster. Soon he was puffing quickly along, as fast as he went with the express. Towns, fields, and bridges flashed by as Gordon sped past. "Hurry, hurry, hurry," he puffed to himself. He was going so quickly that the trucks dared not to make a sound. Gordon puffed so quickly that he arrived at the station early. Everyone was very impressed. Gordon was too cross to care. He was uncoupled from the trucks and set off back home to collect his express. The fat director was waiting for him when he arrived. "Well, Gordon, you've done a splendid job," he said, "but I think we'll let some of the other engines manage the trucks for now. You make a fine goods engine, but you need an even better express engine." Gordon was happy, and with that, he steamed away.
Edward, Gordon and Henry enjoyed their life on the railway. There were no more engines getting stuck on hills or shut up in tunnels. Life was now peaceful. By now, Henry had been painted blue like his friends. Everyone thought he looked splendid. "You look as smart as Gordon," the driver said. "We should have you on the express again. You look just the part." Henry smiled, but deep down he was a little worried. "Is something the matter?" asked Edward one morning. "You don't seem yourself today." "I've just been feeling a little unusual," Henry whispered. "I thought it was just stiffness from not working for so long, but I sometimes feel short of breath." "I'm sure you'll feel better soon," said Edward, but Henry wasn't sure. "I worry about being a bother to the fat director again," he said. "Don't be silly," replied Edward. "You know he values hard workers. As long as you do your best, you'll be fine," he added with a smile. Henry didn't seem so sure. Just then, the driver pulled the lever and Henry puffed slowly away. He was soon puffing along. The train was full of happy passengers and children ran to the line sides to wave at the train. But Henry wasn't feeling cheerful. "Are you feeling all right?" called the driver. "No, I feel a little short of breath," wheezed Henry. "Can you make it to the next station? You can have a nice rest there to catch your breath." "I'll try my best," said Henry. He wanted to stop there, but he knew it wouldn't be right, so he kept on puffing. At last they reached the next station. As Henry arrived, so did the guard, running along the sleepers on the other line. That wasn't right. Everyone was confused. "What's the matter?" asked the station master. "Our engine has failed," explained the guard. "They're half a mile up the line. We need help moving." "We'll have to bring them here," said Henry. "We can't have an engine blocking the line." He knew just how much of a headache fat directors got from engines standing along the main line. "Come on then," said the driver. "Let's go and help them." Henry was uncoupled from his coaches and set off to the rescue. He was still feeling worn out, but he put his worries aside. They quickly found the engine. It was a small red engine who had given up hope on moving on. "I don't feel well," is all she would say. Henry was quickly coupled up. The guard blew his whistle and hopped into his van. Peep, 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 whistled Henry as he started off. It was hard work for Henry, but still he puffed on. I can do it, I can do it, I can do it, he said to himself. And sure enough, he did. They were soon back at the station. Henry's passengers watched with interest and cheered when the train finally arrived. But Henry had no time to celebrate, for he was quickly recovered to his own train and steaming away again. He felt exhausted that evening as he crawled into the sheds. He found Edward and Gordon waiting for him. Well done, Henry, said Edward. We've heard all about what you did. A very grand job, Gordon added. The director will be pleased. You've certainly not been a bother today, Edward smiled. Henry hardly had the energy to reply. He just smiled happily. He finally managed a small thank you, and with all that said, the 3 railway engines fell happily asleep.